Hy 160 veldvoertuie het dan nie die wedren deel geneem. Die groot vraag was in die begin, sou Neil Woodridge en Paul Vermaak in die Nissan Sani die jaar die nasionale produksiemotorkampioenskap agter hulle naam kon skryf. Kom ons kyk.
Perched high up in the Maluti Mountains, Lesotho is one of the most inhospitable and remote countries in southern Africa. High mountains and deep valleys make it virtually impossible to travel without the aid of an old faithful Basotho pony. It wasn't until international funds were made available in the early 1960s that there was any progress in road construction. Bob Phillips claimed he'd just built the worst road in the world and asked if it would be of any interest to motoring clubs. Thus, in 1967, the Sports Car Club organised the first Roof of Africa rally, which was won by a youthful-looking Jan Hetema in a Volvo. By the 1980s, cars had changed somewhat. Compare three-times winner Des Tarberton's futuristic King Scorpion to the early Volvo. Victory in the 1984 event went to the Scarab of Ensslin and Ramsayer, and Neil Woolidge claimed the two-wheel class honours on a 500cc Kawasaki. The 1987 event was described as one of the toughest on record, and Philip Milan and Brian Holt eased their Toyota Land Cruiser through the mud to give the marque the honour of being the first to notch up 3 wins. German rider Jürgen Mayer, on the other hand, gave KTM its 9th win in the mountains. History was made in 1989 when there were ties for both the car and motorcycle wins. Rob Yates and 1976 motorcycle winner Kenny Skolthammer teamed up to give Raceco its maiden roof win, as Kawasaki riders Alfie Cox and Jeremy Davies shared the motorcycle win. Nissan's crew of Arpi Reinicker and Lucas Dreyer were credited with the same time as Yates and Skolthammer to share the car honours. Richard Schilling became the first car driver to notch up a hat-trick of wins by taking the car honours in 90, 91 and 92. And Alfie Cox was starting to stamp his authority on the event and scored his hat-trick on a Kawasaki in 91. Springbok rallyists Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek won in 93 with their potent turbocharged Toyota Hilux 4x4. And Cox was Honda mounted for his 5th win. Land Rover scored its first win in 1994 when Cliff Barker and Mike Redden beat the dust with V8 power. And Cox sailed to victory for KTM. Yamaha quad racer Derek Johnson made history by being the first four-wheeler to finish, but the quad class was not officially recognised in those days. Last year, victory went to Stan Illman and Franz Stangel's technologically advanced Raceco Porsche, which featured a state-of-the-art Tiptronic semi-automatic gearbox. After spending much of the season in Europe, Cox returned to notch up another win for KTM, while Vickers van Deventer made it look easy on Yamaha's quad. First in production class in their Toyota Land Cruiser was enough to give Arpi Reinicker and Robin Houghton the national championship title. Each year, the Lesotho Sun is invaded by hordes of competitors who are always busy with last-minute preparations before scrutineering takes place. This year, there was a good entry of almost 160 cars, bikes and quads, which turned the car park into a colourful bustle of activity. An added attraction was a large contingent of some of the top European enduro riders determined to conquer the Malutis. Both the 200 and 250 motorcycle championships were wide open, and any rider in the top 3 of each class had a realistic shot at the titles. Alfie Cox's domination throughout the year had already secured the open class, but Kevin Fisher and Grant Bloomfield were level pegging for the runner-up position.
I was in Europe last year. You know, obviously Dirk and his brother Bert van Zitzewitz, who's come here before in 80 and 81. You know, they helped me out last year. I rode with the German guys that have come out this year. There's 5 of them that we're looking after. I think Dirk is the best German rider. He's come, this is his 3rd time here. He sort of he understands how the race is. Karl-Heinz Holtz is a small 4-stroke champion in Germany, South German. He's also a fighter. I know he's a fighter. The other guys are more the middle German riders, and I don't think we've got a threat from them. But I think Dirk and Karl-Heinz Holtz could be up in the front.
The father and son team of Franz Čepek Senior and Junior headed the specials category, while single-seater pilot Marius Borain was only 10 points adrift.
Yeah, this year we got a bit of a better lead than we had last year on the overall and the class championship. But nevertheless, the roof will still be the decider. It's better to be ahead than to be behind. So from that point of view, it's a little bit more comfort. But it's 1.5 point scoring, so because it's a long race, so it doesn't make that much difference.
Wikus van Deventer was way ahead of the rest in the over 200cc quad class, and likewise, Christo van der Merwe had things pretty much his own way in the small capacity class.
Daar's 2 dinge. Punt nommer 1, jy moet jouself voorberei en jy sê jy gaan hom klaarmaak. Jy moet nie te hard probeer nie, want jy kan jou 10 kilos kan jouself uitbrand. Hierdie is hy kan jou doodmaak. So jy moet 'n pas kan ry wat jy vir 1000 km in hierdie berge pas kan ry, is nie maklik nie. Jy moet 'n pas kan hanteer van die wegtrek af om hom daar te kan maak.
All Woolwich and Vermaak needed to do to clinch the production category title was finish. Defending champions Reinicker and Houghton, on the other hand, had no option but to go for the win.
Our strategy is a very difficult one. Obviously we want to race and we want to win the race, but it'll be stupid to go out there and push it as hard as possible. Our strategy is to take it easy and to get to the finish. Our prime objective is to win the championship for Nissan, and if we can win the race, that'll be a bonus as well.
As is traditional, the Roof of Africa Rally kicked off with the Round the Houses races, which, combined with the time trial, determined the starting order for the racing proper. Heading the big field of Class A machinery was the Porsche Raceco of Stan Illman and Frans Stangl, with Derek Pinoy, Nick Harper and Rob Walk in hot pursuit. By the time the field got round the polo fields, Illman had a commanding lead and was able to adopt a cautious approach to the jumps and mud pools. Behind him, Pinoy was in full flight, trying to maintain an advantage over Craig Draper and Wade Perrin's V8 Raceco. Veteran off-road racer Linton Draper was in his usual spectacular form, with Corian Gorbeni alongside to read the route schedule. After the allotted 3 laps, Illman and Stangl took the checkered flag and headed for the 30-odd kilometre time trial.
And that's it. Race 1. Stan Illman and Frans Stangl from Carrera Motors.
By comparison, the battle for honours in Class B made the Monaco Grand Prix look like a tea party. The Čepek team held the early advantage, but Borain was in a determined mood, and his Golf-powered Mighty Mag had the advantage on the tarmac. Out of camera range, the Mighty Mag took the lead, but the Čepeks aren't the type to give up without a fight. But Borain pipped the Porsche to the post. Although Natalians John Rowe and Andrew Davies were further back, their antics were no less spectacular, as they kept their position ahead of Richard Schilling's Motortech Raceco. Behind Schilling there was more Class B action, with Max and Juan Moore only just ahead of the similar cars of Leon Botma and Richard Everingham. The production category was the last car race of the morning, and initially Reinicker held off Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert as the Nissan Sani stormed into a commanding lead. Next up was the turbo Toyota Hilux of Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek, as Barker used the ample V8 power to pass the Land Cruiser. Others seemed intent on entertaining the huge crowds that turn up each year. Stieber Fritz and Hofmeister Harolds overcooked a corner in style, but weren't about to stop and complete a three-point turn. Coetzee picked up his pace on the final lap and almost pipped the Turbo Sani in the dash to the checkered flag. Quad racing is spectacular, and this is what the fans wait to see. Once again, Vickers van Deventer stole the show aboard his Jojo Tanks Yamaha Banshee, as Paul Breckel on the new Phillips Rotax and Yamaha-mounted Derek Johnson did the chasing, ahead of hard-charging Kevin Pereira. This year there was a new route for the time trial, which started from Lance's Gap and finished on the TY Road. Herman and Karl-Heinz Silwald set the pace in their V8 Raceco, as Rob Walk chased his dust cloud. Needing to top up with oil, most would stop, but Draper and Gombeni felt that less time would be lost if it was done on the move. Further back, Dardis Alberts and Peter Mathieu were fighting a cat-and-mouse duel with the single-seater Raceco of Richard Carolyn. Carolyn then ran into problems, which lost him over 2 minutes and left him in 10th place. But with 900 kilometers still to go, 2 minutes didn't matter too much. Heading the Class B field was the Chepex, crisp-sounding 2-litre Porsche Raceco, while Schilling was not far behind in his new 1600cc single-seater Raceco. While the competitors took advantage of all the power and high-tech gadgetry they could lay their hands on, the locals were quite happy with traditional horsepower. Or is that donkey power? Woolwich and Vermaak were looking very relaxed at the head of the production category title race and enjoying very vocal support from the local children. Keeping a close watch on the Nissan was Coetzee and Leek, and like the leaders, they were not about to take any chances at this early stage of the race. This was the first roof for Barker's navigator, Malcolm Joubert, and one of his first impressions of the event revolved around the friendliness of the local population. Toyota's first foray into off-road racing with diesel power proved successful, as Andrew and Chris Birkin headed the Class E field in their Hilux 2.8 Turbo. But the time trial was not a good omen for the Bankford Land Cruiser crew. An early misfire left them struggling, but fortunately it soon cleared and they picked up the pace. Special vehicles seem ideally suited to the time trial, and the Silwards led by a minute after the first day of competition. The Class B cars of Chepek and Bahrain surprised a few people by taking the next places. Any vehicle with a very short wheelbase, narrow power band and relatively high centre of gravity is difficult to control, but it's second nature to the country's top echelon of quad racers led by Van Deventer. Watch how the power's used to float over a rocky section and how the suspension soaks up the awkward-looking landings as Johnson makes it look easy. Pereira found an alternative route past the roughest bits and looked very smooth. Paul Breckel went for the press-on regardless touch, as opposed to Yuri Duplessis' smoother style. Christo van der Merwe headed the single-cylinder 200cc class on his Joburg Yamaha entry, as Edenvale's Skalkberger followed. Van Deventer showed why he's rated as the best quad racer in the country, as he led by over a minute and a half after less than 40 kilometers of racing. The bike category round the houses races were held in the afternoon, and the polo fields played host to some spectacular action, as AGA Panasonic KTM rider Daryl Curtis led 250cc championship leader Alex Valls for the first lap. In close attention were the Lesotho office equipment Hondas of Errol Dalton and 1995 250cc champion Graham McLaughlin. Teammate Lance Trethui was chasing hard to keep his championship hopes alive. Seven times King of the Mountain Alfie Cox ruled in the open class race, but had 8 times German Enduro champion Dirk van Zitzewitz chasing him all the way. Lesotho office equipment rider Grant Bloomfield had another German, Karl-Heinz Holtz, on a KTM, watching his every move. Some of the closest bike racing is found in the 200cc class. Here, AGA Panasonic KTM rider Jeffrey Volater fends off a determined challenge from FMF Kawasaki's Clayton Enslin. And Hilton Hayward on the unusual HRD is chased by Rian Finikak's PD Motorcycles Honda. Time trials turned out to be a KTM benefit, as the Austrian manufacturer claimed the first 3 places, thanks to Cox, Van Zitzewitz and Curtis, as Hayward did well to claim 4th and lead the 125 runners. Once the time trials had been completed, some were already packing up, but for most it was time to do repairs and preparation of machinery before the impound and nearly 500 kilometers of racing section 2 the following day. How does one become the king of the mountain? We asked 7-times winner Alfie Cox for his recipe.
Preparation is everything for the Route of Africa. For me, physically, you just have to prepare yourself physically. Your training program has to change, because when you're out in those mountains there, the tighter you get, the more mistakes you're going to make, and you're not going to be alert all day. And you know, the Maluti Mountains can catch you out so quickly. You know, I'm not saying that you can go out there and not have a problem, but you've got to be physically in shape. Your mind has to be right, and you know, the race you must be focused on the race. That's what I try and do.
His first of 2 hat-tricks was back in 1990 aboard a Kawasaki 250. Friday dawned very wet and cold, and the leading drivers were cautious about the day's strategy.
It's a little bit of a problem. It's still a little bit dark, so it's a problem to see nicely. We'll see how it goes. We don't plan to try and get away from the field, so if someone wants to pass, you can pass. And hopefully the main aim is just to get at the end of the day and be back on the starting grid tomorrow. That's the main aim.
Yeah, the conditions have changed unbelievably. It's been raining the whole night. It's going to be an absolute mud bath out there. We've changed our tyres, but whether that's going to help, I don't know. I think they might have to shorten the route or even cancel some of the parts, or maybe even abandon the race at a later stage, because I think it's going to be impossible possibly. But if it clears up, there's a good chance it'll carry on.
Roof legend Francis Tucker was an interested spectator and could have felt sorry for the job Marius Bahrain had at hand. Driving a single-seater in these conditions is not an easy task, and no one envied him. With his misfire cured and electrics well waterproofed, Reinicke set off into the gloom ahead of teammate Kasi Coetzee. It wasn't long before the Land Cruiser, with its 4-wheel drive advantage, began to haul in the Space Frame Specials category contenders, whose crews were already wet and cold. Special Vehicle Championship leaders, Franz Czepek, Senior and Junior, were well aware of the task at hand. But it was no alien territory for Franz Senior, who'd won the race twice before, in 1976 and 1977. Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu were still chasing their first Roof of Africa victory. Each year, the local populace must surely cast doubts about the sanity of these men who come to chase each other through their mountains. Life is no easier aboard a quad, but at least their machines are more manageable than their two-ton counterparts. Wikus van Deventer and Kevin Pereira led the quad field into 424 kilometers of mud, rivers and rocks. Why am I doing this? A question written on many faces at the start. The Ulysses, or veteran brigade, must have wondered why they bothered getting out of bed so early on such a miserable day. But maybe the German riders would feel more at home in these conditions.
I prefer the riding and the dry stuff too. It's not fun to ride in these conditions. It's very slippery, it's wet, it's cold, and all the time you have to be very concentrated. But we are more used to it than Alfie and his friends, so I think it's not so bad for us.
By the time the bike frontrunners lined up for their start, the rain was heavier, and there was no sign of any respite as Van Zitzwitz went chasing after Alfie Cox. Our in-car camera shows what the Forstix Firestone Range Rover crew of Colin Frankenberg and Tony Yeo faced. They were lucky. They had the comfort of a windscreen and wipers, even though the Range Rover was lacking its walnut fascia and efficient heater. Roads, if you can call them that, are narrow in Lesotho, and it was a case of follow the leader rather than stray onto the grass, which could turn into a quagmire at any moment. Drivers also soon realized that there's strength in numbers. Wikus van Deventer on the Jojo Tanks Yamaha showed the skill that won him the 1996 SA Championship. As the day wore on, dry riverbeds soon gave way to rapidly rising rivers, which had to be treated with extreme caution. By the time the quad riders reached them, they doubled in size and called for some long-forgotten Boy Scout survival plans. Lesotho Office Equipment Honda rider Graham McLaughlin had a lucky escape when he was washed under a stranded car competitor and had to be winched ashore. Yuri Human Sr. was competing in the veterans class, and his KTM's engine gulped in litres of muddy water, which needed to be pumped out. The leading bikers soon realized that there was safety in numbers and teamed up to carry bikes across the muddy torrents. Suddenly, it was us against the elements, and no thoughts of KTM versus Honda or Kawasaki. Much to the delight of the local onlookers, the process had to be repeated time and time again. The look on Lance Tsui's bloody face says it all. Once everybody got across, it was time to race again. Production Vehicle Championship hopefuls Woolwich and Vermaak struck early problems, and it looked serious.
No, we broke on a prop shaft. That's not a problem. We've got another one. We can slip it on and get back in and keep going. You know, our objective of the exercise is just to finish, so we must make sure we finish.
The Astoria Raceco was shared by local drivers Wilfred Westlow and former navigator Ashley Thorne, and was the first special vehicle into the service area.
Wilfred, conditions not very good out there.
A little bit wet, I would say. A little bit muddy. And the rivers are deep.
How did you get through there?
By luck, I would say. Yes.
There was frantic activity at the designated service point, and one of the few teams without any problems was that of Reinecker and Houghton, who'd moved into the lead in the Bankman Toyota Land Cruiser. The race had turned into a battle of the 4x4s.
Conditions like out there? Extreme wet and muddy, unbelievable. Eyes you can't see, driving at 40 k's an hour, just so that you can see where you're going. Otherwise, the water stings your eyes.
Frans, you seem to be struggling. Your eyes again, like it was at Sun City.
Yeah, same thing. I don't think we're going to be able to carry on. Eyes are killing.
And the road conditions?
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. You can't stay on the road.
Navigators in the special vehicles had the added problem of wet route schedules, and almost all of the special's occupants needed attention to their eyes. Arriving at the service area, Marius Burain in the Mighty Mag seemed much more sedate than usual.
Your first guy I see smiling.
Yeah, we're having fun here, you know. Stuck for an hour in the mud, but otherwise we're having a good time. Sort of went out, Nardus got stuck, and eventually he's like 4 guys stuck. So, but we got out of it. I think Colin had a winch anchor for us. So we still got 300 k's to go, so anything can happen. It's slippery out there.
Toyota Hilux diesel driver Andrew Birkin had other concerns.
I doubt if the guys are going to get through this one river at the bottom here. The water's level with the bonnet. The quads, there's one quad was washed down the river already. So I doubt if the guys are going to get through.
After a brief respite, it was back into battle for Reinecker and Houghton, followed by the Birkins in their 2.8 diesel turbo Toyota Hilux. Clinging mud acts as grinding paste, and without exception, each service crew was kept busy.
Nee, dis nie 'n mond te maak hierdie nie, is tyd. Nee, ek weet nie of die wedren ons sal aangaan nie, maar regtig baie tyd. As daar net by die rivierkruisings iets is om deur te trek, is dit baie maklik, maar dit is maar moeilik. Jy moet op jou eie stoom deurkom.
The motorcyclists were dropping out like flies, and one wondered how many would remain after the day's racing. Service crews, who normally do routine jobs like refueling, were kept busy doing running repairs to keep their riders in the race. The KTM Gore-Tex team were lucky to have Ralph Nicolai, a former assistant clerk of the course, as a team member.
This must be the worst that you've seen Lesotho.
Yes, and the worst I've seen on the roof. I mean, I've been involved with the roofs now since 85. 88 was bad. I know that we had the rain and the snow. The guys had to ride through rivers like this. But today it has been hell. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We have done 180 k's now, and we've just been swimming basically with the bikes through the rivers. And the only reason that all of us made it up here is because we do it as a team. When we cross the river one by one, carrying actually the bikes on our shoulders across the rivers, and just that's the only reason that we are here. Otherwise, no chance that we could have made it to this point.
With conditions deteriorating, clerk of the course Peter Luck had no option but to cancel the rest of the route. The car field was reduced to only 8 competitors, with 4-wheel drive definitely a requirement.
Geprobeer het om deur te kom, want die riviere vloei, alles is vol water. Ons het meer as een keer laat Robin afklim, dat ons sien hoe diep die water is, om presies te sien waarom deur te gaan. Anders dink ek, as jy nie weet waar jy deur die rivier gaan, is dit net eenvoudig vas.
Cox's hopes of his 8th win were dashed when his bike was washed away, and 22 bikes were left to join the 8 surviving cars.
It's been a long day out there. It's been rain and mud the whole way. The rivers have been a problem from the start. There's a lot of teamwork this morning. The guys are helping each other through the rivers. If the guys didn't do that, there's no way we could have crossed all those rivers. And the last 2 sections have been actually been quite nice. The sun started to dry things up a little bit, and it's made it much better.
Only 3 of the quad riders were left after what was described as the toughest day ever in the route's 30-year history. Richard Schilling has been racing the route for over 20 years and boasts a hat-trick of wins in the early 90s.
I think it takes a lot of patience, it takes experience. You've got to be determined, you must never give up. More so than anything else, the preparation of the vehicle beforehand.
Those are important mechanical elements. The other element that's very important is teamwork. I've been very fortunate in that I've always had very, very good guys with me. First time I won it was with my partner Fred Levesque, then with Robbie Walk, and then with the Masutu Ashley Thorne, who when we finished in single seaters this year, we're going to go back racing together next year. Teamwork is an important aspect.
Day 3 saw a big improvement in the weather, and it was the bikes which had the dubious honour of setting off first.
Well, I'm lying second in the points for the championships. All I got to do is just hang in there and just finish, because I got a half an hour lead on the second act. So I can just finish. I don't mind losing a couple of overall positions if I can just stay where I am in the 200s. I'll be happy, so I can take the championships in the bag.
Van Niekerk had no chance of keeping the powerful pack of KTMs and Hondas off for long in these near-perfect race conditions. Out front, Curtis was holding on to a comfortable lead as he eased his AGA Panasonic KTM across the terrain, followed by the very impressive Van Niekerk, whose 125 was showing a clean pair of heels to much larger machinery. Sunny mornings also posed problems, as Karl-Heinz Holtz and Lance Trethewey found out, riding directly into a rising sun. Save for a slight misfire, everything was going right for Reinecker and Houghton, and their task had been made a lot easier when the Nissan failed to complete the previous day's racing. Rocky mountain passes characterize the Roof of Africa rally. Not only are they extremely uncomfortable, but they also need to be treated with caution, which the Birkin brothers display. The third-place Land Rover Turbo Diesel of Mike Redden and Wyatt Joseph found that a footful of throttle was the only way to overcome a large rock that had been dislodged by the Birkins car. That rock, which had originally been dislodged by the Birkins, then moved again by the Land Rover, caused untold problems for the first of the two surviving raceco's. Navigator Karl-Heinz Silwald needed some assistance to get them on their way again. Niels Lemmer and Karel Leroux held 5th place in their Class E Toyota Hilux, but were a long way behind and were being caught by John Lambert and Eric Scholz in the other raceco. Shortly after the start, the quad field had been reduced to 2 when Paul Breckel retired his Phillips Rotax, and all Yuri Duplessis needed to do to win was maintain a steady pace. Heading the veteran motorcyclist class was Yuri Human, which was remarkable considering that he only decided to race a couple of weeks beforehand. A new pass, Boilers Pass, proved to be an obstacle that no biker expected, nor needed after such a tough first day. What made it worse was the fact that the notorious baboons and slide your ass passes followed shortly afterwards. Without fail, every rider came to grief on this one and needed a rest stop before reaching the top. Van Niekerk took a tumble while Van Zietswitz climbed it in a cloud of steam as his KTM overheated badly. Jack Peckham was finding it difficult to hold down a top 10 position with 250 championship leader Alex Vals and Karl-Heinz Holtz breathing down his neck. The large contingent of German riders quickly discovered that the Maluti Mountains are unlike anything they have to tackle during the European Enduro season. As the motorcyclists battled the passes, those with the benefit of four wheels faced much friendlier terrain, and the Land Cruiser was firing raucously on all 6 cylinders. By contrast, the Birkin Turbo Diesel sounded flat and unresponsive, but still maintained a fast pace as the Barberton motor dealers fought off the ever-present threat from Redden and Joseph's similarly aspirated Land Rover, which had been passed by the Silwarts Raceco. Lambert and Scholz had joined the long list of retirements, which had grown earlier in the day when Barker suffered head gasket problems. And next to go were the Silwarts when their much-abused clutch finally cried enough. Now there were just 5 cars left in the contest. Redden and Joseph were not about to give up their hopes of finishing second and were literally flying over the bumpy roads. Making it 3 Toyotas in the top 4 were Lemmer and Leroux. Sensing the veterans class victory, Yuri Human punches the air with delight as he heads for the home stretch, as quad leader Yuri Duplessis on his Bankfin Yamaha Banshee follows in his usual unruffled style. One more rocky pass separated Curtis from his first Roof of Africa win, and he attacked it with passion. Fellow KTM rider Alex Vowles wrapped up the National 250 class championship, despite this late scare when his bike boiled dry halfway up the climb.
Everybody got some water?
4-time gold medalist at the ISDE, Germany's Karl-Heinz Holz has a tough time threading his way through the rocks. Once the rocky passes had been negotiated, the leading German riders tackled the short haul to the finish at Maseru. Although Rian Finikak had slipped back to 4th on the road, he still held 3rd place, which would ensure him the 200cc title. Another impressive German rider was Michael Mailhammer, who was not far behind Kawasaki's Jack Peckham. After almost 10 hours in the saddle, Curtis was greeted by jubilant applause as he arrived at the Pope Stadium to claim the most important win of his career to date. It had been a perfect ride from Curtis as he took the win by 22 minutes from Van Zietswitz and Finikak on the giant-killing Honda 125.
I feel great. I can't believe I've done it. Done the roof, it's my 6th time. And I mean, with Alfie winning it every year, I thought it was an impossibility, but I've finally done it. I can't believe it.
This was probably the most important win in the careers of Reinecker and Houghton. They had to win and did exactly what was required. Shortly after the finish, Redden and Joseph were excluded for a minor infringement earlier in the day, which left Toyotas as the only finishers in the car category.
Dit klink eintlik onmoontlik dat jy moet 'n rally wen en jou oppositie moet uitval om 'n kampioenskap te wen, en dit het wel gebeur. So lyk vir my ons geluk het gedraai na al die ongeluk wat ons gehad het hierdie jaar. En die geluk op die einde na ons kant toe gekom.
For Yuri Human, it was more than just a win. It was a personal triumph over grief. 3 weeks prior to the race, his son, Yuri Jr., was killed while out training for the event, and he rode it in memory of him. Yuri Duplessis' winning margin in the quad class was over 2 hours after Van Deventer broke a back axle with 60 kilometers left. He drove in on 3 wheels, winning the Spirit of the Roof award.
Ja, dit was baie lekker geweest. Ongelukkig het die weekends bietjie
teenspoed gehad wat tot my voordeel was, maar dit was 'n baie lekker reisie. Moeilik. Gister met daai riviere het ek nie gedink ons aan die einde sien nie.